I found my stepmother counting the cracks in the glass. Revenge stories. The first time I saw her do it, she didn't notice me watching. She stood in the corridor of the glass house, fingertips grazing each fracture on the window pane, whispering numbers under her breath. 1, 2, 3. Then she'd stop, press her palm flat against the surface, and start over. It wasn't madness exactly. It was more like ritual. I remember how the morning light cut across her shoulder, turning her into a shape made of gold and dust. Leora had always looked too composed for grief. Even after my father's death, she moved through the house with a kind of stillness that made the walls quieter. The mirror above the staircase reflected her every step, as though the house itself was afraid she'd disappear if it didn't keep count. I didn't ask her why she did it. The last time I'd asked her anything, about the missing photograph, about the sealed drawer in Father's study, she'd smiled that patient smile of hers and said, "Some things stay hidden because they were never meant to survive the light." So I watched instead. She'd trace the same 3 cracks in the window above the dining table every morning, always stopping at the 4th as if it belonged to someone else. The cracks weren't new. They'd appeared the night of the storm, the night my father's car slid off the road. She said it was the thunder that woke her, not the call from the police. The following week, she started writing numbers in her notebook, rows of uneven handwriting, each line ending with a small circle drawn in gold ink. When I asked what it meant, she closed the book and said, "It's how I measure the silence." That was when I realized she wasn't counting the glass. She was counting time, how long it took before the house forgot him, before I forgot her. Sometimes I'd catch her reflection watching me through the kitchen window, lips moving without sound, her eyes tracking something just behind me. Once, I asked if she still dreamed of him. She said, "Only when the glass forgets to lie." I didn't sleep that night. The wind brushed through the cracks, and the sound it made was almost human, like whispering through teeth. Spring came early that year, warm enough to tempt the house into opening its windows again. One morning, I found her standing at the same spot, counting slower now, her breath fogging the glass. "Do you ever lose track?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Every time I start remembering." Then she pressed her hand harder against the window. I heard a faint snap, one more fracture branching across the pane. A new line in her invisible tally. The next morning, she was gone. No suitcase, no note. Just the window, webbed with cracks that caught the sunlight and scattered it into dozens of broken rainbows. In their reflection, I saw my own hand resting where hers had been. The glass was warm. Behind me, the clock ticked once, then stopped, as if waiting for me to continue her count. I didn't. I just stood there, watching the cracks multiply with the morning light until they looked like veins beneath the skin of the house. And when I finally spoke, my voice sounded like hers, calm, measured, and certain of one thing: that silence, too, can keep score. The glass house has a way of remembering touch. Every place she stood now held a faint outline, like heat left behind on frozen glass. After she vanished, the house felt split between memory and reflection, every room dimmer by one heartbeat. I tried to repair the cracks she used to count, but each time I patched one, another appeared somewhere else, thinner, subtler. Like the house refused to heal without her permission. The mirror in the hallway was worst of all. It began to hum faintly at night, a low vibration, almost like breathing. When I passed, it showed her silhouette moving behind mine, slightly delayed. I found her notebook in the drawer where she used to keep the linen napkins. The last page was torn out, the impression of her handwriting pressed deep into the paper. The number 37. Beneath it, in smaller script, when I reach 40. The house will be clean. I didn't know if she meant the house or herself. The next morning, I walked through each room, whispering her counts the way she used to. 1, 2, 3, pausing at the places she would have stopped. It felt childish, maybe even desperate, but it kept the silence from expanding. Outside, Whitlock City blurred in fog. The ferries moaned across the harbor, low and mournful. The same tone as the house when the wind pressed against the windows. I began to think maybe she hadn't left at all. Maybe she'd found a way to stay inside the reflection. The glass sometimes moved as if it were breathing her name, Leora, Leora. At dusk, I opened the curtains in her old room. The sunset spilled across the floor like melted gold, catching in every fracture she had ever counted. I stood there, frozen, as the cracks glowed, each one lighting in sequence. 1 through 37, before fading into the color of evening. When the last one dimmed, the mirror stopped humming. The house grew still. That night, I dreamt she was standing at the dining table, whispering numbers to the dark. I woke to find my own voice finishing her count, 38, 39, and on 40. Something inside the glass shifted. A thin pulse of light ran through it, quick as a heartbeat. The reflection smiled, and though it was my face, I knew the house had chosen who to remember. By the time summer arrived, the cracks had formed a pattern, one that didn't belong to coincidence. They spread across the dining window in deliberate symmetry. Like veins or handwriting, every line seemed to point toward the mirror above the staircase. The one that had once reflected her counting. Some mornings I caught myself doing the same, tracing the pattern with my eyes. Mouthing her rhythm. It wasn't grief anymore, it was imitation. The house taught me how to keep her alive without her permission. I tried inviting people over once, a colleague, a neighbor, but they never stayed long. They said the air felt charged, that the light shifted whenever they passed the mirror. One of them touched the glass and flinched. "It's warm," he whispered, like someone's breathing through it. I pretended to laugh. The truth was, I had started leaving food by the window, tea. Sometimes half an apple, things she used to prefer when she thought no one was watching. Each night they disappeared, as if the house itself were remembering her habits. In late July, the heat pressed against the windows so hard it warped the reflections. I saw her in them again, smiling. But with that same distracted look she used to wear when she lied. She was sitting at the table, counting softly. Only this time I could hear her voice on my side of the glass. 1, 2, 3. Stop before it breaks. I froze, afraid to breathe. When I reached out, my hand met warmth, and I saw both our hands aligned on opposite sides. For a moment, we were the same gesture. That night, I couldn't tell if I was awake. I walked through the house and saw her shadow moving ahead of me, folding napkins, lighting candles, adjusting the frame of my father's photograph. Nothing was solid. Everything shimmered like heat on asphalt. I called her name once, quietly, just to see what the air would do, and the lights flickered. By morning, the cracks were gone. The glass had smoothed itself into seamless reflection. But something else had changed. My own reflection stood a little straighter. Shoulders drawn back, head tilted just like hers. And when I turned away, it didn't. It stayed, staring after me with that patient calm she'd perfected, counting, still. Under its breath. It happened the night I finally dared to look straight into the mirror again. The air in the glass house felt heavy, as if the walls were waiting for something to end. I lit a candle and stood before the glass. It no longer showed a room, it showed a memory. Leora sat at the table, her back to me, the same candle burning beside her. She was counting, not with her lips but with her breathing. Each inhale made the reflection brighten. Each exhale dimmed it. I whispered her name and the sound broke the rhythm. She turned, and her face looked the way guilt would if it had learned to smile. "You stopped at 39, she said. The voice came from inside the mirror, not behind it. "The house can't rest until 40. I shook my head, but the reflection of my hand moved differently, slower. As if it no longer belonged to me. The cracks began to spread again, not on the mirror this time, but across the walls. Running like veins through plaster and glass. The sound was almost beautiful, like ice forming over water. I stepped closer, and the floorboards sighed. "Where did you go?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Nowhere. I stayed exactly where you left me." The candlelight wavered, bending her image into mine until there was no border between us. "Finish it," she said. "Say the last number." I hesitated. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, whispering something that might have been the count itself. I heard the clock strike once, slow, uncertain. And then I said it. 40. The house inhaled sharply. Every crack in the walls glowed pale gold for a heartbeat. Then vanished. The mirror cleared. Her image softened, fading not like disappearance but like acceptance. The candle guttered out, leaving a thin line of smoke twisting in the air. In it, I thought I smelled her perfume, sandalwood and rain. I waited for the silence that followed to feel like peace. Instead, it felt like inheritance. The reflection that remained wasn't hers or mine, it was something in between. Wearing a half-familiar expression that belonged to both of us. The glass house was clean now, just as she had promised. But as I turned away, I realized the window by the stair had begun to crack again, forming the first line of a new pattern. And this time, the counting started on its own. By autumn, I stopped closing the curtains. The glass house preferred its truths lit. Every surface reflected something I no longer tried to correct, her handwriting pressed into the dust on the study desk, her perfume clinging to the hallway like invisible thread. My shadow moving with a rhythm that wasn't mine. I lived inside her silence, and it began to sound like forgiveness. The mirror above the staircase was whole again, polished to a shimmer that held no cracks. Only depth. Yet sometimes, in that depth, I saw her figure sitting calmly, waiting. She didn't count anymore. She just watched. One evening, as rain streaked the windows, I heard a faint ticking beneath the storm, a new sound, softer than the old clock. I followed it to the dining room. The light flickered across the glass, and for a second, I saw her reflection kneeling, tracing invisible lines across the pane. The motion was slow, deliberate. Then she looked up, and it was me. Not a vision, not a ghost, just me, in her posture, her quiet certainty, her control of space. The realization came like breath on the mirror. I had finished her count. And the house had finished remaking me. The cracks that once covered the window were gone, but their pattern remained in memory. Like veins remembered by skin long after the wound heals. I wiped the glass one last time, leaving no trace but a faint smear that caught the gold of the lamp. It looked almost like a number, maybe 41, maybe nothing. I didn't check. Outside, the fog rolled over Whitlock City, turning the harbor lights into blurred stars. The reflection beside me straightened, mirrored my breath, then nodded, small, approving. I whispered, "Rest now." It didn't answer. It only smiled faintly, the way she used to when the house obeyed her. I turned away and left the candle burning. Behind me, the mirror held the room exactly as it was, the golden light, the ticking echo. The quiet symmetry of an ending that refused to end. And somewhere in that stillness, I understood, she hadn't taught me how to count the cracks. She'd taught me how to live inside them. The rain fell harder, tracing new lines down the glass, each one catching the glow before vanishing into dark.